this is Joel Baker with American Giants, and I have been wanting to do this for a long time, and that is talk about the strange Canadian head muffler men that are only found in Canada. There's only two of them. I visited the other one, which is called Mr. Furnace, many years ago, right when I was starting to get into Muffler Men. And finally, I have a long layover in Montreal, and it was the perfect time to rent a car and come down here to Naperville. And this is where one of these Canadian head muffler men started out. We have no idea why these two giants, the one over near Toronto and the one here in Quebec, why they have different heads. It's a very unique head. There's no record that International Fiberglass made that head. We call them Canadian heads. Roadside America referred to them early on as like a horse face head. So obviously they didn't think they were attractive, but there is a story behind these heads that I hope to figure out one day. But regardless, one of them came, it's like a bunion body. It's got the bunion boots. There's an old postcard actually of this giant in the late 60s taken in this town. So my hope is to do some exploring around town here and find this old location. It was like at a diner that had the name Giant in its business name. And we have old newspaper records that by 1976 they were submitting a request to change the name to something else. So it's my belief that in the early to mid 70s, this giant left this town and went on down the road a little bit. So I'm going to go ask around and see if we can figure out where the old building was. It's probably long gone at this point because that was taken in the 60s, but I'm hoping I can at least find the spot where the giant was when he stood here. Well, this is unbelievable. I've actually located the same building that was in that old postcard from the 1960s. I did not think I would be able to find it. I asked around. Locals knew pretty quickly what I was talking about, and they said, yeah, it's still there. And I said, you're kidding. I mean, I was expecting, it to be a McDonald's or something now, or vacant land. I had no idea that I would actually find the building and it would be so easily recognizable. I'm trying to get the same angle as the postcard. There's this white tent they've put right in front of it, probably like a fireworks tent or something. But this is it, and this was like a little local eatery. It was kind of takeout, like a little diner. You would come here and order your hot dog and your soda, and kind of a festive summer atmosphere. And they must have found out about International Fiberglass and ordered this Muffler Man, of course, with the unique head. But over here on the side of the building is right where he stood, and he would have been. This building here wasn't actually. This is an addition that was added later, so that wasn't here. But the giant was like right in front of where that was, and I believe his time here was pretty brief. I think by the early 70s he was well on his way out of here. But he made for a great picture. He had on a white shirt and yellow pants, and then that white chef hat, and then he held a hot dog, a giant hot dog, in his left hand, I believe. And there was no Coke cup or no cup or soda in his right hand when he stood here. So that's really interesting. He was known as the Big Fellow. I'm not going to try to say that in French. The Big Fellow or the Big Man, and that might have been the name of the restaurant here too. But it definitely fit the theme, and I think locals knew all about him when he stood here. The sign is here. In that postcard, you can see a picture of the sign, and the sign is still here, although I'm not sure it's the same one. This looks square to me, and the one in the picture looks round. But anyhow, it's really cool to be on the spot where one of the two Canadian head, as we call them, muffler men, stood. I'm now in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, and that is where the giant came next after he left Naperville to the south there. He was at that little roadside hot dog stand. And then in the early to mid 70s, we think, he came up the road up to this town. It's about a 20-minute drive. He was probably trailered up here. And the only thing we know about his time here was that he was at a golf course called the 19th. And it was in French, of course. Probably, a spin-off or a play on words of the 19th hole. So nothing is left of the golf course today, or at least that we know of. It's hard to know exactly where even this 19th golf course was. Was it a full golf course or a putt-putt course? We really don't know. And unfortunately, we've been able to dig up almost nothing for pictures. But we do know that a few years later, probably in the late 70s, he was purchased from the golf course and moved south of here to a brand new location. And we'll head down there next. And that's actually where he stands today. So we finally have arrived. About 12-minute drive south, you find a little roadside restaurant, an antique store, and outside is the Giant, and I think it's called like the Giant Antiques. He holds a sign that advertises the antique store, although back when he first came here, it was in the late 70s, and he was brought here to this location to advertise for the little restaurant that's here. I don't know what they served back then, but later on they were known for serving pogos and poutine and some different Canadian things here. And he first actually appeared on Roadside America in 1998, and they put him on their map. And back then, we knew him as Cokeman. Of course, I wasn't following him back then, but people called him Cokeman because I think he had white pants and he had a Coke shirt. And he was all labeled up for Coke. He held a Coke cup. And then that big hot dog, I think the same one that he had in Naperville, he held here. But then somewhere along the line, he got this cup that went with it. Around 1981, the owners who brought him here and set him up here on this concrete slab, they sold the business to the current owners. So the current owners have owned him since 1981. And that original couple who bought him, they've sadly since passed away. And the current owners have had him all these years here. Eventually, they stopped using him to advertise for the restaurant, and they switched him around 2009 to advertise for the antique store. And that's why you can see he's holding a sign for the antique store. It was also at this time that they repainted him. They got rid of the Coke stuff, and that chef hat, that white chef hat that you see in the old 1960s picture, it's still there. They just cut a piece of board, a piece of wood, and made it a cap, but it's actually still the chef hat up there. Now, the origins and the history of this guy really fascinate me, and unfortunately today I'm not going to put all the pieces together. But being on site with him, I can definitely see that he is a classic Bunyan. He's got the Bunyan boots and no international fiberglass stamp on his legs, which is very consistent with the Bunyan models. And then you've got those Bunyan suspenders, so everything is good. The arms are all good. And then as we go up, you just have that really strange head. It's almost as if International Fiberglass took a head and made it much narrower, but used pieces, because the ears and the hairline is familiar. It's very similar. It doesn't have quite the same little notch of hair that the Bunyan has, but everything is similar except the head is much thinner. It's a much thinner head than the original. So it's either been cut up and heavily modified, or there was some artist in this area in Canada that basically made two heads, at least, maybe more, but there's still two today, and these are still on Canadian Giants. So that's some background and some history into what we call the Canadian head Muffler Man.